Welcome back to another episode of the Crime Scene Insiders. I'm one of your hosts, Angela Davies, and I'm here with my co-host, Dion Watson, and we're going to take you back under the barrier tape. So before we get into today's episode, we've got some really big news for you. Dee and I are going to be joining the lineup at CrimeCon Birmingham on the 25th of April 2026. And then we'll be back again for CrimeCon London on the 3rd and 4th of October 2026. Birmingham is a brand new stop for CrimeCon UK, and it's already shaping up to be something special. We're going to be there alongside some of the most recognisable voices and experts in true crime for a full immersive day of stories, insight and conversations. Tickets are limited for Birmingham, so make sure you get yours as soon as possible to avoid disappointment.
And then we're going to be taking everything to the next level in London, which is another chance to meet, chat theories and dig deeper into the cases that we cover. Whether you've been listening to us since the beginning or you've only just discovered us, we'd love for you to say hello at either event. Or, better yet, come and say hi at both. Hang out with us and the rest of the true crime community at CrimeCon Birmingham and CrimeCon London. Partnered by the True Crime Channel, the expert-led true crime channel available wherever you listen. Just head over to crimecon.co.uk and use our promo code INSIDERS for 10% off your ticket.
Announcements about guest speakers and content creators are being released on the CrimeCon UK social channels, so keep your eyes peeled. 2 cities, 2 incredible events. We can't wait to see you there. And now for this week's episode.
In this week's episode, we are going to be talking about another true crime that happened to Ange.
I've been a bit unlucky the last couple of years, haven't I?
You definitely have. Within this, we're going to talk about a burglary that happened to Ange a few years ago. And actually, we did discuss this on episode 14, which is our true crime episode talking about the assault that happened to Ange a few years back as well. But we are very chatty Cathys, as you probably know from listening to the podcast.
Yeah, I think everyone's probably getting wind of that by now.
Exactly. And it was going to end up being quite a long podcast. So we've took an excerpt from that, discussing the burglary and some of the issues that happened within it, because there was a lot of issues around the process for this as well, wasn't there, Ange?
Yeah, I think there was like 2 incidents, both the burglary, which came first actually in 2018, and then the assault that occurred, where I felt the investigation process and then the full criminal justice process was really lacking and felt let down. And the burglary just highlighted a number of other places, which is why we brought it into that episode about the assault. But then we just thought we'd focus that episode solely on the assault. But the issues raised and the circumstances in and around the burglary were just as important, we felt, which is why we wanted to go back to it, isn't it?
It is. So, with that, here's our conversation about the burglary.
Going back a couple of years ago, I was burgled. Do you remember?
Yeah, I do.
It's really interesting being a victim of crime and a couple of times after always being on the other side of it. And again, this wasn't a great experience as well. And I know it's a bit off the beaten track, but it seems apt in the midst of this conversation. So I was burgled, as it was, I'd not long since moved into a new house, and it was an absolute state. We bought it as a renovation project. The back patio door, the handle was a bit dodgy, so you had to make sure that you really like brought it in and lifted it up to get it locked. And one of 2 things happened. I had a cousin come round who went out the back for a cigarette, and then also I'd washed the floors and left the patio door open. So at some point within a week, those 2 things happened, and I can't remember when it didn't get relocked again. And the funniest thing about this is that we had a friend coming to stay for the weekend. So she was with me on the Friday night, and then you were coming over, and the 3 of us were spending some time on the Saturday, weren't we?
Yeah.
And on the Friday night, we were sat talking, and we were talking about the house. We were talking about the renovation work. And I was saying, oh, I feel really lucky here. I feel really safe. I can't imagine anything like such as a burglary or anything like that. And then I looked at said patio door and said, hey, I should check that's locked now after all that. It would be sod's law, wouldn't it? And then we kind of laughed, and then I went, oh, no, it's fine. And I didn't get up and do it. I don't know why my instinct was to get up and check it, and I didn't follow through, and we carried on nattering.
Yeah.
Anyway, myself and my friend had gone up to bed. We were both really tired and she'd done quite a bit of traveling. We'd had a cup of tea actually, and we'd gone to bed quite early because we were like, let's have a good night's sleep. We'll have a good day tomorrow when Dee gets here. And I was almost in a deep sleep and I heard kind of a smashing noise. And so I sat bolt upright in bed and then I listened and then I just thought, oh, it'll be my mate moving around. You know, when you realise you're on your own and then you're like, oh no, somebody is in the house.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, oh, it'd be my mate just moving around or going to the loo. Now, funnily enough, when I talked to her the next day, she'd heard the same noise, but she'd been half asleep and she thought, oh no, that'll be Ange just moving around or getting a glass of water. So we'd both heard it. And then the next day, my friend had come downstairs first and was going to put the kettle on. And I was boiling, and I remembered being boiling through the night, and I didn't think much about it. It was October time. So what had happened is somebody had come in through the back patio door, gone in and was making a search downstairs while we were upstairs in bed. I'd been selling some goods to put towards the new kitchen build. So we'd sold some old white goods off and stuff like that were no longer going to be any good to us. And I had them in a jar in the kitchen. Now, how often do we tell people about stuff like this?
Yeah.
And
CSI.
This is the other weird thing. I'd looked at this money, I'd put it in a coffee jar, and it was about 300 quid. And I'd looked at it and I thought to myself, I should move that or do something with it because you know better. And then it was hidden kind of behind some other items, and that whole kitchen was getting pulled out and there was stuff everywhere. And I thought, well, who the bloody hell would find it there anyway? And again, I didn't move it. So there's two instincts that I just did not follow through on. Yeah. So I am partly responsible for this.
No, you're not responsible for it. Only that person is, but those are things that you would give as prevention advice on.
Well, usually, yeah, that's the thing, and I know better. Anyway, there's that jar that I think must have been dropped and the money was taken and a couple of other items were taken. So the guy came in through the patio door. I think that when the jar was dropped and smashed, the thing that woke us both up and made us think, oh, it's the other one moving around.
Yeah.
I think that he must have panicked then, knowing that there was people inside, and he's run off.
Okay.
So when my friend came downstairs the next day to put the kettle on, she's like, it's boiling in here. Is the heating on? And I was like, I was thinking that. So we're shouting up and down to each other. And she got down. She was like, where's my jacket? Because it had been hung on the banister.
Okay.
She's like, where's my jacket? And I was like, I don't know. And she was like, shit, I think you've been burgled. And I was like, no way. And she said, is your patio door usually open? And I was like, no. And I realised the patio door had been left open all night. So the temperature must have dropped. So the heating came on. So we were boiling. We were rendering down.
So your thermostat was in there and it was trying to regulate for the outdoor temperature.
Yeah. I know. So it cost me a fortune.
I was going to say. That's
gas company more than anything.
Yeah.
As well as the 300 quid and a couple of other items. It cost us more in heating.
For the 300 for the night's heating.
Yeah. Outrageous. So anyway, he'd taken my friend's jacket and put it on the sofa and searched it. Fortunately, she had taken her wallet and stuff upstairs with her. So that was fortunate. So that was moved into there. Some stuff had been moved around in the kitchen and then he'd exited. Now, I phoned the police straight away, as you do. And we know that the emergency response call centres have like a question and checklist that they have to go through in certain situations. And it's fair enough. And we're going through these questions and she's asking me how they'd gained entry. And of course, there was no forced entry on the door. He's tried it and tried his luck and got in. I keep saying he, but I do actually know that this person was a he, by the way.
It's not
I'm
a
not
bias.
just being sexist. Yeah, it was a he. So he had just tried his luck and unfortunately for us, got in. And basically, as I talked through what had happened, the woman in the control room told me that there was nothing there forensically, so they wouldn't be sending a crime scene investigator.
She picked the wrong woman.
Well, I had the trauma of just being burgled. It's not very nice, I have to say. I felt violated. I didn't like it at all. And it's something that we talk to victims about when we go scene investigators. We have to often try and give them crime prevention advice, and then say things, that hopefully will give them a bit of comfort or make them feel better. Like, they don't usually come to the same place twice. Check all your doors, sort your locks, that kind of
Big
thing.
reassurance, isn't it? Because people often feel vulnerable and think that it might happen again. So giving a bit reassurance that that's not likely.
Exactly. But in this instance, I'm giving it to myself and I know all the right things to think and say and do, but it's not the same. So I had the trauma of being burgled and also shock. It was shocking, actually. That's the best way to describe it. I was in shock at this point. And then she told me that there was nothing there forensically. And that was not the best thing to say to me at that point, I have to say.
No.
It was like a red rag to a bull. I mean, I stayed calm. I wasn't mean or anything. But I said to her, can I just ask, are you forensically trained? And she said, well, no, but. And I said, no, like, there's no but. No is the only answer I need. No, but we ask these questions. And then from that, we know whether there's something there or something not there. And I said, do you? I said, that's really interesting because I am forensically trained.
Yeah.
And I am an ex-crime scene investigator. And what I can tell you is that he's come in with wet feet and then been through on my hard floors.
Yeah.
There's the potential.
High chance of footwear.
Yeah, exactly. And she said, oh, I'm really sorry. All we can do is go through this list. And because there's no forced entry and because you're not really sure where it's been moved and the house is a bit upside down because you're having renovation works going on, like it all points to there's nothing there forensically, so we wouldn't send a crime scene investigator. So I was mad.
And obviously we hadn't been in the police for a while at this point, and every force is different in terms of what they attend. But for us, a burglary to a dwelling, someone's home, was a automatic attendance as well, wasn't it? So that then even you're like, oh, all of a sudden we're not attending burglaries to people's homes as well.
I know. Well, but the thing is, and the trouble is, though, I believe that now a lot of forces aren't attending burglary dwellings. And I think that also, I know definitely not attending car crime.
Yeah,
unless there's blood and somebody says there's blood. There are a number of forces up and down this country that won't even turn out for car crime, which I think is quite shocking personally.
Well, it is because it's that lower end that when offenders start out with, and you start letting them get off at that end, then what are they escalating on to? As we know, is the case as well. People do often escalate in crime when they're getting away with it at that low end.
But then again, even if you investigate and catch them, what's the criminal justice outcome? And then what's the expense to the criminal justice outcome? Because actually the criminal justice system lets police down and the investigative part of it down, I think, as well, significantly. But I still don't think that means we shouldn't be turning out and gathering the evidence.
No.
Now, I don't think that was the case at this time for this force. I just think that this woman had gone through a tick list and she'd decided over the phone, without any forensic knowledge or wisdom at all, that there was no forensic evidence here.
And isn't that crazy that people who are making those decisions don't have forensic awareness training or anything? So you can get more. It's very difficult to do over the phone as well. Yeah. But even having some more knowledge where actually you can direct questions, like things like, do you have hard floor and what sort of flooring surface do you have? That sort of thing. That can point you in the direction of if an examination is potentially going to get something or not.
But this is the other thing as well, because a lot of forces now as well are triaging crimes over the phone. So some of them are doing it through the police officer. The police officer might look and review and then speak to an scene investigator and triage that way. That's maybe one thing. But actually, some of the triage is being done by people phoning up the victims and asking them. Now, they've just been burgled or they've just been a victim of crime. They're in shock. They're not forensically trained. And you're asking them questions and looking at their perspective. And so unless somebody really can spot a pool of blood.
Yeah.
Then there's a lot of ways to get out of going to these crimes, isn't there?
Yeah. And we know ourselves from some of the scenes we've been to that stuff hasn't been seen. I mean, I've got some straight away that come to my head that people have been to and said, there's nothing there for you, but I need to get you to come down. and we've got
Yeah.
there, and I've got several. I'm just thinking of one that we went. It was a criminal damage. Someone had broke a window. Whatever.
Oh, yeah.
There's a little bit of blood, but it's not like there's nothing too much to get there. And what did we find at the scene, Ange?
An entire knuckle.
Yeah, yeah. Someone had sheared their whole knuckle off, and that had been missed, entirely missed.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a small thing.
But the trouble is that the police are not that forensically aware, nor are they trained really to look in the same way that we are for these evidence types. They don't know all of the evidence types that they should be
Of course
looking
not.
for either.
And we know they cannot get in-depth knowledge, but a basic knowledge is really important, isn't it?
Yeah. I just think that triaging over the phone is not the best way. Maybe if a crime scene investigator is doing the triage.
You can direct questions
can-
a bit better, can't you? But
Yeah.
still you're relying on, like you say, a victim's eyes.
The perception of a victim who is shocked and in trauma and
Yeah.
probably also wants to get cleaned up.
Yeah.
But also then, if you're not attending that stuff because you're triaging it over the phone, who's doing that victim contact? Who's giving that reassurance? Who's giving that crime prevention advice?
Yeah.
Going out the window, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
Anyway, the whole point of this was I decided then that I was going to do my own investigation into this because not sending a crime scene investigator was just not acceptable to me. I was also told that an officer from CID would be coming the next day to take a statement. I found this a bit weird because I was like, why are they sending CID for a burglary dwelling, but they won't send a crime scene investigator? Now,
Yeah.
usually the reason that CID are involved in something like that is not because it's victim centered or they're trying to give best level service to the victim, is usually because there's a spate in the area and an issue ongoing, or there's an operation ongoing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I already knew, okay, this is not just my property. So CID was coming the next day. I called you, didn't I? And you had quite a bit of our kit, and you were you going past the office at the time, or you had the kit on you?
No, I had the kit at the house. I think we'd not long done some events, so we had the CSI kits we use for our events here, didn't we?
That's right, yeah. So you brought all the CSI kit, because I was in the middle of renovations. I didn't have anything in my house, did I? Because it was upside down. So you brought the CSI kit through and we investigated. So I photographed it and I was looking at the point of entry because we've got a really high wall at the back of our house and then into a garage space. And at that point, the garage space was left open. So I knew they'd approached that way, but then was trying to establish how they'd got in. And we saw scuff marks up the side wall. So we think they'd got out the same way they'd got in. And there was like a corner of the wall that led onto, that was between mine and my neighbour's property. So you could kind of climb up and then get over the wall and drop down, essentially, couldn't you?
Yeah.
There was places to put your hands and feet, and there were scuff marks up the wall. And I was like, but how have they got up? Like, you need a leg up because it's quite high. And we went.
That's why it feels so secure, isn't it? It is a high wall all the way around.
It really is. And then there'd been a wheelie bin at the back of the property, not at just ours, but there's like an alleyway at the back of our properties, and there'd been a wheelie bin there for a couple of weeks that nobody seemed to be claiming, but it was quite a new one and it'd been in good condition. And we went out and we took a look, and basically the wheelie bin that was in new good condition all of a sudden had a great big dent in the top of the lid. And it had been raining, hadn't it? And
yeah, it had.
When we opened the lid, at the bottom there was like soggy papers and rubbish. But then just cleanly on the top there was a balaclava, a can of lager, and a fag butt. And we were like, come on. He's had a great time, dropped it in the bin. But he had pulled the bin like just a little bit up from the land of my property in this alleyway. So we know that like any evidence is not going to place him inside the property. But actually, as good intelligence information and how close it was to the property, the fact that there was a dent in this brand new bin would suggest it's been pulled over and used. The fact that these things were dry and clean just on top, where everything else underneath was a bit manky and wet, is good intelligence information, and it's good likelihood.
Brilliant intelligence information.
Exactly. So we photographed all of this. We photographed the entry exit points, photograph leading up to the house, into the door, and then into the floor. We, of course, fingerprint powdered the point of entry. And then we did the floor just inside, didn't we? You did it,
Yeah.
actually. And you got the most beautiful, perfect footwear mark.
We got a brilliant one, didn't we? It was good.
Yeah. That was
Very
really
unusual.
unusual. Yeah, it was a really unusual print. So, of course, bearing in mind I'd just been burgled, I was also then excited. And it's that work mode thing again, which allows you to go in and distract you.
Yeah.
And our poor friend, like, I'd been burgled, and she was like, "What the hell?" And then we went to go out a bit later in the day. Do you remember when we had our
Forgot about this.
our mannequin in the back of the car, and it was
Yeah.
Halloween? We opened the door, and she opened the door to get in the back, and the mannequin fell out and headbutted her. She was
She just
like,
screamed, didn't she?
"What is this? What hell is this?"
I know, bless. I think we traumatized her a little bit that weekend.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say. Definitely. Anyway, as it was, we powdered this footwear mark. We got these other items of evidence. We photographed everything. And lo and behold, a crime scene investigator turned up a few hours later, didn't she?
Yeah, knock, knock, knock at the door. We just finished.
Yeah, we just finished. And I remember saying to her, I wasn't expecting you. I was honestly told that you weren't coming. Actually, I remember saying, I've just finished my own exam, and I saw her face. Because you know what it's
Yeah.
like when we go and victims have done things to be like helpful. And you're like,
I seen
"Oh,
this on
God."
CSI.
Yeah, and I saw
Oh,
her
no.
face, and I think her heart sunk, and she thought, "Oh God, here we go." But then I explained our backgrounds, and she was like, "Oh, thank God for that." And I said, like, in all honesty, I would never have touched it. I'd have left it to you, but I was told that there was no way you were coming, and this is the conversation I've had with the woman on the phone, and she then said, "We have to attend all burglary dwellings," so I don't even know why she's told you that.
Yeah.
But this was a bit farcical as well, if you remember, because she lifted the footwear mark and took it as her own.
I know, thankfully, we hadn't lifted it
We
at
hadn't
that
lifted
point.
it at that point, so it was exhibited as hers, and she took a couple of photographs, not as thorough as ours, I have to say, but still she took a couple of photographs, lifted the footwear mark. One thing that she did as a scene investigator that we would never do, she didn't box it there and then in the scene or label it, and she had it in her hand as she walked across the road, and it was windy, and the gel lifter slapped
Drizzling.
across her leg and then got drizzle on it, and we were
Yeah.
thinking, well, that's that mark bloody lost.
Yeah.
As it was, it wasn't, but it was still a poor scene examination. She also broke my lamp. She knocked it off and broke my lamp, didn't she?
Broke your lamp,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I mean, it was
She caused more damage than the burglar.
I know she did. This is our lessons in how not to CSI. Well, the thing was then is we also told her about the items out the back, the point of entry, how we believed it got in, and she didn't go and have a look. She didn't view it. She didn't take the items that were cleanly placed on top of everything, because she basically said it's not in the property, so it won't prove anything. And we said, we know it's not in the property. It's just outside the property. Actually, it's good intelligence information. And if all else fails, then at least it places this person in the back of the alley, and it may potentially give you a name.
Yeah. Because the other thing at this point as well is we had actually had a look if there was any CCTV, but nobody else had. As far as they know, at that point, we might have had CCTV of him coming out and putting that in that bin.
Exactly. Well, the thing is they didn't check CCTV in any of the area.
Nothing. No.
So she refused to recover it, and she insisted that it would never be sent off, that the force budget would never cover it, that it didn't prove anything. And we were like, I think it does. But what can you do? Like,
no,
her job, isn't it? We're not in force at this point. Like,
no.
What can we do?
Exactly. Because the thing is, the DNA, you would have a fight to get DNA off, as we've discussed before in previous podcasts. There's a cost to that. Fingerprints, however, there was a can there that was dry.
Yeah,
that could have been fingerprinted as well.
exactly. I mean, a balaclava, a can of lager, and a cigarette butt. It's like
I know.
a set of kit at a crime scene. Like, come
Burgling
on.
kit that you get so excited
know.
to find.
I'd been well chuffed if I'd have found that at the scene. But
Yeah.
anyway, she didn't take it. And then the CID officer came the next day. He took our statements. He elaborated and said that there was kind of a spate ongoing in the area. And actually, there was somebody that had come out of prison and he was quite well known. And they did think that potentially it was him, and that actually the footwear mark was amazing because it linked to 8 other properties in the area.
We still got it.
We've still got it. So that footwear mark that they weren't going to send anybody out to.
Oh, wow.
Linked to 8 other incidents in the area. So he was chuffed regarding that.
He would be.
Well, because it's good intelligence, isn't it?
Suppose you didn't ask her to come back on the payroll.
Oh, yeah. You might well have done, you know.
Just a little joke.
So I told the CID officer that essentially the crime scene investigator had refused to take these items, but these were the items that we'd found. And he was then annoyed because he basically said, but if we can't link in any other way, this is really good intelligence information. And actually, we've got a spate ongoing here. Like, she should have taken it. And I said, she's saying it wouldn't get sent off. And he was saying, well, that's my decision to be making with potentially a crime scene manager. It should have been recovered. Have you still got it? By this point, we didn't have it because she'd refused to take it. So we were like, well, what we're going to do with it? I'm not keeping it. It's essentially rubbish now.
It was a few days later by this point as well, wasn't it?
The CID officer was there the next day, but it had been put in the bin. So now it didn't have the same level of integrity. I think we picked it up and handled it without gloves and put it in the bin because she wasn't taking it.
Yeah, because we had handled it, obviously, and recovered it from the back lane appropriately before, but now we got told it was of no use. It was like, okay.
So he was not very happy about that, and he said that he was going to feed back and look to do some training. Anyway, they managed to identify somebody, and they found his shoes, and it turns out that he had a set of burgling shoes. So they were pristine in a box.
Oh, now, thank you.
Well, people might not believe this, but sometimes burglars do have a set of like burgling shoes, don't they? Yes. So he did. He had his everyday kickabouts and then his burgling set, which would have been great. But actually, a mixed profile came back from inside the shoe. They tested the shoe for DNA, and a mixed profile from the inside came back. Now,
that's such a
what
shame.
he was saying, so he was in a bed sit a couple of streets over from me.
Okay.
And what he was saying is that he'd got out of prison, he'd gone to score some drugs, he'd had them, he'd been unconscious, effectively like knocked out from the drug taking. Somebody that was in the flat had put the shoes on and taken the shoes, and that he'd gone burgling.
Okay.
So this is really interesting because cell site analysis, they did put him in the place that he said he was, but also like that covers my area. So he was definitely in the area, but it's no good because it doesn't directly pinpoint. Do you know what I mean? It just covers a specific area. No, so it just means he was in this area. But had they sent off the balaclava or the can or the cigarette butt or done fingerprints on the can, it could have either supported or refuted his story, and it could have placed him in the back alley when he was saying that he was unconscious in bed. Or if not, it could have put the mate that he was saying that it did it in the back alley. And this is the importance of not making assumptions about recovering evidence. And actually, you never know what's going to be important.
Yeah, this is what we were just having a discussion with a guest about, and we said about it's always the context, and at that time you do not know if something's relevant or not, sometimes till you've done the interviews a bit later down the line and you think, oh, okay, that's crucial now.
See, even if she'd have just taken it and it had sat there, when they realised that the cell site analysis just placed him in the generic area, okay, so we know he's in the area, then when you get your mixed profile back from the shoe, And then he's saying it will be mixed profile because somebody else has taken him and done the burglaries and he's being unconscious. Okay, well, look what we've got. We've got these things here. He's saying he's in this flat, but actually we can send these off, and if we get a hit, it places him directly behind that property.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as a consequence, that case was dropped.
Oh.
So nobody got done for the burglary. It went to the CPS, and at first, the CPS, I believe, also have an awful lot to answer for. I have to say the CID officer in the OIC in this case, he was absolutely brilliant with me from beginning to end. And also because I was an ex-scene investigator, he talked to me as one-on-one rather than as a victim. He didn't really talk down to me or patronize me, which sometimes I think police can do to people.
Which they shouldn't, is completely wrong. It shouldn't matter who they are talking to. But
yeah,
it's good that he did speak to you like that as well.
He was brilliant, and he kept me up to date all the way along. They pushed forward with the case and they pursued the case. It went to CPS, and at first he had a charge and it was supposed to be going to court. So I got asked to keep myself available for court. I was still waiting for the court date, and then it must have been maybe a year later or something. We were away. We were down south delivering one of our events.
We were, I remember.
And the CID officer called me and said, I've got some really bad news, but the CPS have decided to overturn it because they've decided that the evidence is not enough. And this is when I had the conversation with the CID officer saying, actually, if those items had been taken out of our alleyway, then they could have placed them at the back. But the CPS, despite deciding to charge and going ahead, it had gone up to somebody who was then allegedly a top reviewing officer. And this top reviewing officer had decided that there wasn't enough and that the charges were being dropped. I was like, why is it only just getting to this person? Like, how can one person make this decision, then it's getting passed to a top reviewing officer? I think I'm getting justice for my burglary, and then some top reviewing officers deciding that actually there's not enough. This
a year later as well.
Yeah, and the CID officer, how much work has been put into it, how much investigation, scientific tests.
What a waste of money.
One reviewing officer is making a decision that actually there's not enough to charge because it's a mixed profile, and he's saying that he's in this area, in this bedroom, and somebody else has nixed it. Like, I can actually understand where he's coming from, but I think they're being mishandled from the CPS from the outset.
Yeah, a lot wrong.
Yes.
But that's two instances where you've had dealings where, well, in that one, the police investigation side, in terms of the police officer's investigation, was much better. But two, where actually there's been failings in the process.
Yeah.
We've not got the outcome that
well, in the burglary, the misinformation from the control room officer.
Yeah.
I was advised that there was no forensic evidence there by somebody who's not forensically trained. I was told that a scene investigator wouldn't come. The scene investigator turns up quite some times later and turns out and says, actually, we have to go to all burglary dwellings, so you've been given misinformation. Now, anybody else would have cleaned that entire scene up.
Yeah, because people often are, they feel violated that that's happened. And one of the things that we encounter is sometimes you would get there, if you couldn't get there for a while, and you'd get there and they'd be like, I just needed to get it back to normal. And they've cleaned it. And if you've been given the advice, nobody's coming out.
Well, that's
why
the thing.
Wouldn't you?
Somebody else would have entirely cleaned that scene up. So that's misinformation in itself, because actually they were supposed to attend all dwellings. And clearly that call centre officer had no clue.
No.
And then I don't feel like the crime scene investigator did a full or thorough job. I don't think it was a good job. It certainly wasn't the standards that we would have worked to. But in the same vein, I also don't know if, because we'd already done quite a bit, whether she also felt there was a need to put as much effort in.
Yeah, that's fair as well. That's fair.
And we had done a fair bit.
Well, we'd pretty much finished what we were doing. We'd photographed it. It was finished, and then the knock at the door came.
Yeah. That's the end of our conversation about the burglary from the original recording, but we wanted to air it and still put it out because we thought that it raised a number of important points throughout investigation. Not only that I felt let down by the criminal justice system a couple of times, but also from an investigator's point of view, and something that we try to drive home frequently, is that it's so important to always keep an open mind and let the evidence lead you. One of the sayings in crime scene is evidence doesn't lie, people do.
Yeah.
And also, one of the other things is that context is everything. So just because you've got a piece of evidence and you think at the time that it might not be relevant or it might not be important, doesn't mean that as the case develops or the investigation moves forward, that it isn't going to become important. So it's not for you as an investigator to sit judging at the time. Oh no, we'll not bother with that. Or yeah, we'll pick this up. Or it's about considering the big picture and the full context and what you can get for it. And I think the other thing as well is we always say that not every piece of forensic evidence is going to be your smoking gun. So it's not your golden bullet, is it? That's going to be link you directly to an offender, case solved, bish bash bosh. Like sometimes it's about the intelligence that it can bring to the investigation as well.
Yeah, it's really important, isn't it? And like you say, those particular pieces of evidence that we're talking about here, they would have really added to that picture and built a whole picture and given some circumstantial evidence and intelligence that could have really built on that case and made a real difference there.
It could have been the difference between the conviction and no conviction, I think, as we've kind of discussed throughout. But
yeah,
it ended up where it ended up.
We're not going to labour on that, but it is a really important point to consider that you don't know what is going to be important and what's key to an investigation until you have all of the facts surrounding it.
That's it. That's exactly it. So I think that we should wrap this episode up.
Yeah, me too. And hopefully it's the last episode that we will cover a true crime that has happened to Ange.
We start a new podcast, which is Ange's True Crimes.
Yeah. I hope not.
I really hope not. I hope that is it, to be fair. The last few years, to be fair, both of them a couple of years back now, but there were a rough few years there, and it is extremely different being a victim of crime as opposed to working as an investigator in crime, and I do not wish to do it again.
Yeah, I don't blame you. So with that, listeners, can we all keep our fingers crossed that we don't have any more of these for Ange?
Yeah, thank you.
And we hope you've enjoyed that. And we will be back in a fortnight's time where we will take you back under the barrier tape.